Hey, I'm Mr. Williamson. In this video, we're going to talk about lipids. Let's get started. You probably ought to take good notes so you have something to refer back to. Turn them in the classroom when it's time to. Let's get started here and get going. First of all, we're talking about lipids, which are fats and oils and waxes. All right. So fats are usually animal products, oils are usually plant products, and waxes are produced another way. We'll talk about all of those. All right. The structure of a lipid is that it has a large number of carbon atoms and a lot of hydrogen, but not much oxygen. Remember, carbohydrates were like C6H12O6 or some variation of that. Well, in lipids, we're talking about having a large number of carbon, and you can see there's a lot of carbon here, lots of carbon. Each one of those carbons usually have one, maybe two hydrogens attached to them, but they're a very, very small number of oxygens. And like in this case, there's only two. All right. Don't ever worry about knowing the structure of one of these. You don't need to know the structure of carbohydrates. You don't need to know the structure of lipids. But you need to recognize that they are long chains, and they're called hydrocarbon chains. The very same structure that you would find in gasoline or petroleum products, because those are the same thing, but we're talking about in biological terms. The hydrocarbon chain is this long chain of carbons and hydrogens. What's at the end makes it different, and how long that chain is makes it a different structure. All right. So what are the properties of a lipid? First of all, they don't dissolve in water, and that's really big. All right. Our cell membranes are made out of lipids, and they don't dissolve, which is good because that means our cells are waterproof, essentially. All right, it's what gives it the property in water that you see, like in this drawing here, this image here. You can see where the oil and the water do not mix. All right, and I'm not talking about why oil floats on water. That's density. The oil has less mass per milliliter than water does, so it floats on top. I'm talking about why doesn't it mix? Because lipids do not dissolve in water, and it has to do with that hydrocarbon chain. All right. Talked about monomers. The monomer of a carbohydrate is a saccharide. The monomer of a lipid is called a fatty acid. A fatty acid basically consists of at least one long hydrocarbon chain, and again, something at the end down here, whatever that is. Okay, normally it's a carboxyl group, but I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Again, don't worry about the structure. Just understand the monomer of a lipid is called a fatty acid. A fatty acid consists of two ends. A carboxyl end, which is hydrophilic, meaning it loves water. It's attracted to water. All right, hydro is water, philic is loving. And a hydrocarbon chain, which is hydrophobic, which is water-fearing. And this is what it gives it that characteristic when you put oil on top of water. All right, so you have the carboxyl group at one end. This loves the water. All right, so that likes the water. And then you have the hydrocarbon chain here, which does not like the water. No water. No, bad. All right, so when you see the water, a cup of water, let's say, you have the water like here, and you have the oil on top of it, you would see all the carboxyl groups, this end over here, you would see all those carboxyl groups near the bottom, and then the hydrocarbon chains going out from there. That's what gives it that characteristic. It separates. It's in the water. It doesn't dissolve, and it separates because of that carboxyl group being attracted to it, and that's why there's a nice neat line when you put oil in water or in a liquid. There are different types of lipids, triglycerides, waxes, and oils. I'm going to talk about each one of those. All right, talk about triglycerides first. Triglyceride is 3 fatty acids joined to 1 glycerol. All right, so this, again, don't worry about the structure. I'm just showing you so you understand what that means. All right, this is the glycerol. That's the structure of it. It looks like I'm figuring it out right now myself. It's C2H5, apparently. All right. Remember, every carbon has 4 bonding sites. Has 4 bonding sites. So we're going to have to attach 4 things to every carbon. And you can see in this that there are 4 attachments. Also, remember, oxygen has 2 and hydrogen has 1. All right. So every hydrogen should have 1 bond, which we can see right there. All right. Or you can see any one of these. Each one of the carbons has 4. All right. So 1 there, 4 there, 4 there. Every one of them has 4, and oxygen has 2. And you can see, well, if I hadn't covered everything up here, 2 there, and you can see there's 2 here, kind of. It really looks like there's an oxygen, goes to the carbon, and this one goes to the carbon over there, that oxygen. All right? But it's 3 fatty acid joined to 1 glycerol. All right? There are 2 types of triglycerides, oils and fats. Oils are liquid at room temperature, all right? And they're usually found in plants. All right? Liquid at room temperature. So we're not talking about bacon grease that when you heat it up, it liquefies. All right. We're not talking about meat fat, which renders out at high temperatures. We're talking about a liquid at room temperature, and they are unsaturated. Unsaturated means that there's a little, like right there. There's a unsaturated means that unsaturated means that they don't have all the oxygen. Unsaturated means that they don't have all the hydrogens connected to the. Unsaturated means that all the carbons do not have. Unsaturated means that all the carbons don't have hydrogens attached to them. You can see right there, there is a double bond between the carbons. If you count them, there is still 4 bonds for each carbon. So we're looking at something like this. There's 2 bonds between each of those carbons, and then each of the carbons have a hydrogen attached to them. All right? And then they also have going to the next. So they all still have 4 bonds. You got to have 4 bonds for carbon, but they're not loaded up. And like I said, they're usually found in plants. The only oil that I know is animal produced, the only one I know, there's probably others, but is sperm whale oil. And that's extremely, extremely pure oil. And that's why we almost hunted them to extinction, is because of the oil that we wanted to use for use around the home, I guess. All right. Well, fats are solid at room temperature. So think of meat fat. All right. Like I said, bacon or the fat that's on a piece of meat or steak or something like that. Usually found in animals. And it is saturated. You can see in here, there on the diagram, there are none of those double bonds in the carbons. All right. If you saw one, you would see the hydrocarbon chain bend, and that's where you see an unsaturated fat. But they're all straight. They're all perfectly straight because they're all saturated. Saturated fats are not good for you. The unsaturated fats, the oils, are much better for you because they have the ability to pick up stray hydrogen ions, which can cause problems. All right. Here's the difference between a saturated and unsaturated fat. Again, you can see where the 2 carbons each have 4 bonds, but they're not attached to hydrogens, which is what makes it saturated. Think of it like when you saturate a piece of cloth with water. You dip it, you soak it into a bucket of water, or a pool, or whatever, and it comes out, and it can contain no more water. It's all the water it can hold. All right. That would be the saturated. We cannot add any more hydrogens to that molecule, but we can add some to this one, so it's unsaturated. If you pay attention and you're thinking about it, if you go in your kitchen or someplace, you would see that oils and fats. And again, if you look at this image of the oils, you can see that all of the oils that are here are plant oils. Jojoba oil, walnut oil, sesame oil, grapeseed oil, canola oil, olive oil, peanut oil, flaxseed oil. I can't read that one. I think it's lavender. I have no idea why we included household drain cleaner in there. Okay, coconut oil, all plant-based, all plant-based. On the other hand, if we look at the solids, the fats in this, then you would see butter, which comes from cows, okay, animal-based. Lard, which is rendered fat from animals. This Crisco is a vegetable oil that they have actually saturated. They've taken a plant-based and made it saturated. But if you look around your house, you will see oils that are coming from plants, and you'll see fats that come from animals. And I still have no idea why we included drain cleaner there, but we did. Waxes. So we talked about triglycerides, fats and oils. Let's talk about waxes. They consist of a really long fatty acid attached to an alcohol. I'm not going to show you that. It looks the same. All right. This makes the waxes waterproof. And in biology, we use them in plants to protect leaves from dehydration, because, like, think of something in the desert, kind of where we live. Plants need to be able to prevent dehydration, to retain water. And they're also found in ears to form a protective barrier against microorganisms. All right, so, like, for instance, we can talk about plants being waterproof. And again, it takes us back to that water video where the cohesion draws the water into a ball, and there is no adhesion because there's nothing, the structure, the molecular structure of wax, the water doesn't adhere to it, so there's no adhesion, it balls up. All right, we could look at animal wax like beeswax. It's produced by a gland in the bee, and I'm not sure where. I should look that up. I didn't. Oops. But it is produced by an animal. Now, or we could talk about earwax. Earwax protects the inside of your ear from developing, usually actually fungal infections. The idea of earwax is that you have the ear canal, all right, and then you line it with wax. You line it with this wax. Now, wax is waterproof, so when you get water into your ear, it can roll back out. Fungus likes the following conditions: dark, moist, and warm. That describes your ear perfectly. It's dark, and if you get it wet and the water stays in there, it's moist and it's warm. Now, what you probably do, like I do, shouldn't do, is you take a Q-tip and you stick it in your ear. Well, the problem is that pushes all the wax back to this point. So when you do get them wet, the water can build up behind it and not come out. It's almost like a dam. This is what causes swimmer's ear. The water gets into your ear, does not come out, and fungus can grow in there if you get the spores in there, and you get swimmer's ear. All right. The last thing we're going to talk about is steroids, and these are included in lipids because they are composed of 4 rings of carbon, a lot of hydrogen, and almost no oxygen, just like all the rest of the lipids. So here you see this is actually testosterone. Again, don't worry about the structure, just understand the concept. Every one of these corners is a carbon. All right, and I'm not going to draw them all in there, but every one of those is a carbon. And attached to each one of those carbon are hydrogens. Again, I'm not going to draw them all in there. The only oxygen is this oxygen over here and this oxygen over here. So it's in a ring, all right? A lot of carbon, a lot of hydrogens, not a lot of oxygen. All right. Where do we find steroids? Well, this is testosterone. It's a steroid produced by your body to create growth, and both men and women produce it, just like both men and women produce estrogen. All right. Again, that's also a steroid. It's in hormones. That's what those are. Nerve tissue produces it. Venoms, so snake venoms, spider venom. All right, the steroids that can cause all kinds of problems. If we were when we're in school, we'll show you a video on venom that's a little scary, and it's in plant poisons like poison oak, poison ivy, things like that. All right, so that's steroids. That is that brings us to the end of this. We're all done. I hope you, if you have any questions, please put them in the Ed Puzzle or ask me in class. Hopefully you took good notes. just to review real quickly what we talked about what a lipid is, its properties. They're waterproof. They don't dissolve in water. They consist of a long hydrocarbon chain. Okay, so that it's a lot of carbons with a lot of hydrogens attached to it. All right, and as a result of that, we get the structure that you see usually with a carboxyl group of some sort, some kind of group there. So you have these long hydrocarbon chains. It gives them the property of water. They separate in water. They don't dissolve in water. And there's that real fine line. We talked about the different types of lipids. We talked about triglycerides, of which there are two types: oils and fats. Oils are unsaturated and usually come from plants, and fats are saturated and usually come from animals. And all those things are 3 fatty acids all attached to one glyceride. Again, don't worry about it, just get the concept. We talked about waxes and the function waxes. Basically, they're long hydrocarbons, like you see there, that are attached to an alcohol group. Don't worry about it, just understand that they are used for waterproofing, especially in biology, in our ears and on plants and things like that. And then finally, we talked about steroids, where we include in that. It's not a long hydrocarbon chain, but it's a lot of carbons, a lot of hydrogens, and not much oxygen. And that's why we include it there. And we find those in hormones, nerve tissues, venoms, things like that. So if you have any questions, like I said, ask questions in the Edpuzzle or in class, and I'll be glad to answer them. Hope you took good notes. Good luck in the future.